Sources are reporting that Utah to the Big Ten is a done deal. All right, see ya. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Utah to the Big Ten. That's the headline this week in the Big 12. Is it true? Is there validity? And if it does happen, what does it look like for this conference? We'll get there with TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction. Also, Sam Levitt, Avery Johnson, would they leave for Tennessee? Because there are reports that maybe the Volunteers are looking to the Big 12 for their next signal caller. Then Texas Tech is doing the unthinkable, making a lot of money and spending it. They have 12 blue chip prospects. The Big 12 as a total has 24 in football next season. We'll get to all those things and more. TJ Pittenger. Oh, by the way, if you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. Why is Utah leaving the Big 12, and are they?
Realignment rumors never stop. It doesn't matter what day it is, what part of the calendar it is. Is Utah going to the Big Ten?
The very reputable source that I have from Ute Zone says yes, and it's all but a done deal. So where this comes from, it went viral on Twitter for these message board geniuses that are saying Utah is going to the Big Ten, and now it's a done deal. If I read direct quotes from Ute for Life 22, and before I get into this, there is some jest here. I'm not going to say that I trust Ute for Life with what I'm reporting and where I think Utah will go, but he gives a lot, like multiple paragraphs of why Utah would leave the Big 12, and starts by saying several ADs and university presidents, particularly from older Big 12 schools, have clashed with Utah reps in media rights discussions and scheduling logistics. So Utah, it would be no surprise if pieces of this are true, in that the Utes have had a hard time adjusting to the Big 12 conference. When they came in, and this will surprise no one, Utah fans were pompous. Their athletic director was pompous. They had won 2 Pac-12 championships. They thought they could get to the Big Ten. It would not have shocked anyone related to Utah if they had gotten the nod to that conference. When it was the Big 12, many of their fans were disappointed. I heard from their sources and from their reporters, hey, altogether, there was this want, this wish for much more than what the Big 12 can give Utah, and they weren't included with the Washingtons or the USCs. So going to the Big 12 was a disappointment overall. I'm not upset with that. I get it. If you have had this overblown idea that your school is going to go to a bigger and better conference and make more money, and it doesn't happen, I'm sure you are disappointed. That doesn't bother me. But then saying that in the coming month, Utah to the Big 10 is all but a done deal, that Fox and NBC are working together, that AAU status is in the queue right now, and Title IX review, alignment, and compliance audits, and there are edits to this that it says, I can't say more without risking outing someone, but if you've been following the tea leaves, none of this should be too surprising. An unpublicized visit from 2 Big Ten officials to the campus. Utah's new indoor facility was a checklist item for Big Ten as well. And as crazy as this sounds, again, pieces of it make some sense. Salt Lake City makes some sense. Utah, as this poster alludes to, makes more money in the TV revenue category than Maryland or Rutgers. They're more appealing than Maryland or Rutgers. And maybe with Big Ten resources, Utah can be good. But we're also talking about Utah, JT. JT? Where did I pull that? JT is the host of Locked On Utes. That's exactly where. So we're just going to flip those 2 letters around. Yeah. TJ, what we're talking about, whether it's you or JT Westerfield of Locked On Utes, what we're talking about is a Utah team that finished 11th in football, 14th in basketball. They've been last place in baseball over the course of the last few weeks in the Big 10 and the Big 12. How are you going to go to the Big 10 and translate immediately, right? That would be the one question I have if I'm anyone. Tony Petitti at the top of the conference. How are you going to take what was a mediocre to bad slate in the Big 12 in revenue sports and translate them positively to the Big Ten? Utah had a much better shot this time last year at a conference upgrade. They don't today, TJ or JT or whoever you are.
I watched your face as you said that.
Immediately questioned myself.
The consternation that hit your face is kind of the same consternation that I have of Utah going to the Big Ten right now. So maybe it works out well. The thing is, so if you were to ask me, and I feel like I've got a good perspective on this as a complete outsider, but as somebody who has followed as a Big 12 outsider, but somebody who has followed very closely conference realignment. Utah might be at some of the top of my lists when it comes to going to one of the Power Two, right? I don't think that I would have many people. Now, distinguishing that from Utah fans' view or fans of Utah, or looking at Utah's fans, if you're another Big 12 member, let me try and say it correctly. I mean, they might not like those people, but I think even most Big 12 people would probably say, yeah, Utah would probably be on the top of a list, right? And so they would be a team that could maybe work out there. The problem you run into is, do they work better than a Florida State? Do they work better than a Clemson? Do they work better than a Miami? Do they work better than a Georgia Tech? I think that's kind of where you're getting to that range of, well, what about North Carolina? What about Virginia and some of these big flagship programs in other places? That's where I start to question. Now, not to say that Utah couldn't be kind of on par with the Georgia Tech, but I don't know that I'd put Salt Lake up against Atlanta, from that perspective. And so, yeah, I mean, could Utah work? Certainly. Are they the next out? I don't know. That seems like a little bit of a stretch to me. Now, maybe the one big factor being that the ACC, though they lessen things with their members to get out, I don't know that any of them are still super close unless ESPN facilitates a deal. And the only way I see ESPN facilitating a deal is to go to the SEC for certain members, right? I don't see them saying like, hey, Fox, let's, scratch your back a little bit. So I don't know. I think Utah could work. I don't see them working before, a Florida State, a Miami, a Virginia, a North Carolina. When you get down into the Georgia Techs, the Louisvilles, others, yeah, they'd be kind of in that range, but I don't think they'd demand what others on the East Coast demand. That's not a Big 12 shot. That's not a Utah shot. Those are just my thoughts.
And TJ, to talk about this in less of a vacuum and more of the context of the last 4 years of realignment news, the MHVER guy on Twitter was kind of the first one to release USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. And we all thought, okay, who's this nameless guy on the Bird app that's spewing stuff about these two schools going to a major conference outside of the Pac-12? It's exactly what happened. So I don't want to discount the fact that there are people who have sources and knowledge that goes beyond what the everyday man does. And sometimes they use anonymous sites or anonymous names to put that information out there. But here's where I think this whole thing, you already mentioned Florida State is much higher up there, but where the whole thing falls apart for me in this exact sense is the direct quote from the poster. The behind the scenes, he says, issues with us in the Big 12 are far worse than what's being portrayed. We've been looking at options since joining the Truck Stop 12. I think that now you're starting to get an emotional response out of this report, which included looking at options of going independent. I don't think Utah ever would have done that. Here's why I start poking holes. He also says, I don't know how this deal was able to be made. I don't know how the Big Ten can go to 19 or who would be the 20th. I don't know what the buyout looks like. I don't know how many concessions they're giving the Big Ten to join. So this is just a guy who I believe has some validity in that the Big 12 and Utah have not had the best friendship, the best partnership so far, and that early on, it's been tough to get the two to cooperate perfectly. You saw their athletic director publicly say they were happy to be in the Big 12. Then after officiating snafus, what he thought to be officiating snafus, he said they weren't in that current moment. And that created a whole firestorm. So I'm not shocked to hear half of this. What I am surprised to hear is that the Big Ten and Utah have a done deal, but also the details of that deal haven't been disclosed, and who the 20th member would be, and the buyout, and the revenue that you would get from TV, and if you have to concede some of that. So this is where it gets fishy. Whether this is true or not, I don't think this move would be advantageous for the Big Ten, and I don't think for Utah that, especially given the way they have not been able to sustain their first year in the Big 12, a jump to the Big 10 is going to fix anything. Oh, you want possibly better football? Oh, you want to compete against Ohio State now? You just finished 11th out of 16 teams in the Big 12 and missed a bowl game with what was considered preseason to be your greatest team in school history. I don't know if I'm subscribing to that being able to translate to the Big 10.
Yeah, I have a tough time seeing them get to the Big Ten and have more success, because what's going to happen is they are going to have to take less money, right? If UCLA had to come, if Oregon and Washington had to come in at lower shares, they're talking about, would Florida State have to come in at lower share? Like what would that look like? I don't know that Utah's getting a quarter of a share in the Big Ten, right? And so how does that translate, right? Like, and then you're having to compete with that kind of, maybe not an SEC type schedule, but a pretty tough schedule if Ohio State and Michigan and Indiana and Illinois and some of these programs get put on, Oregon, USC get put on your schedule. they're kind of in a better spot in the Big 12, if we can just be honest. Now, if they can go on a run of, which I don't predict this, but if they can go on a run of winning 3 or 4, 5, 6 of the next 10 Big 12 championships, and they can consistently be in the playoff and kind of prove that, like, hey, last year was a blip on the radar and just a fluke. We are going to be the dominant team in the Big 12. I'm sure they will get looks like that, but you got to have some success to go with it first. And, you build some of that up, and I think you're in a good spot. I don't know, man. It seems crazy to me to think that they would be just jumping out right now.
I don't see it happening here, but I applaud the guy for taking a half hour to write a bunch of words on a fan forum site. Today's show is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime's where I go to find tickets. I love going to see Tyler Childers play. Yeah, I'm not the biggest MLB fan, but I like concerts, and GameTime's the place to get concert tickets, or even an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment, it's huge. And with GameTime, you can take out all the stress of buying last-minute tickets. GameTime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, and the app prices usually go down as tip gets closer. Their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Last-minute deals, that 60% is perfect, not just for sports, but also comedy, theater, and the aforementioned concerts. All-in pricing means no surprise fees. At checkout, what you see is what you pay. Right now, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. And if you download GameTime today, you'll get last-minute tickets at lowest prices. That's guaranteed with GameTime.
A possible Big 12 quarterback maybe jumping over to backfill for Tennessee. I've spoken with multiple people in and around that program, and what I've asked, hey, who is Tennessee's quarterback 2? And all they've told me is, I don't know, but quarterback 1 is not on the roster right now. Just quick thoughts on Nico, though, before we go on to talk about Big 12 stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we'll get to Sam Leavitt, Avery Johnson, Rocco Becht, all being possibly in the conversation for Tennessee to poach from the Big 12. But as far as the situation with Nico goes, I think this proves, and I mentioned this a lot on my show, that the era of the transfer portal has changed to the point where the transfer portal does not exist. This is like NFL free agency, but on steroids plus some. And the reason I say that is because even in free agency in the National Football League, there are restricted free agents, or there are contract stipulations where one guy can only go to this team in the event that the other team gives up draft pick considerations or money, or there are all kinds of ways that they police the free agency in the NFL and rules put in place. In college football, if I'm Nico or I'm Tennessee, I, the player, can unenroll, can leave. The portal's not even open right now. And Tennessee can look at a player and say, you don't have a spot here. West Virginia just cut north of 25 players from their football roster in preparation for possible roster cuts that come down from the federal government. What we're looking at in college football right now is NFL free agency, but with less regulation. So if you're a player and you want to go play somewhere else and want instant eligibility, don't even enter the portal. Just unenroll from the university, re-enroll somewhere else, and take your NIL deal. And by the way, if you're Rob Wright, the basketball player at Baylor, and you've signed a 2-year contract on an NIL deal, that contract doesn't really exist. They can't make you play at a school. They can't handcuff you to the bench or to the field or to the court or to the rim or to the ball. They can't. All you got to do is leave. The portal doesn't exist. It's a fugazi at this point, and Nico's move proves that even further with Tennessee, that you can kind of do whatever you want.
Some thoughts that the Big 12 may lose a quarterback to Tennessee. Do you have not necessarily inside information, but do you have a gut on this? Like, yes or no, Tennessee has a starting quarterback that played in the Big 12 last year when they kick off the season?
Yeah, I'm gonna go no, but it's a very loose and it's not a very confident no. And here's the reason why: Sam Leavitt, Avery Johnson, Rocco Becht. Those are the guys that are being thrown out there. And TJ, I want to go back to what you said. Tennessee donors, Tennessee sources, they are mentioning how QB1's not on the roster. They're going to go find their dude. They're going to go find a guy who will fit the brand, who's better than Nico, a kid that led them to the playoffs last year. They need somebody better than that. Sam Leavitt, an elite quarterback. Avery Johnson, elite quarterback. Rocco Becht, elite quarterback. And what they can do is wave that $4 million price tag in their face. What we have learned in the last few weeks, go back to Rob Wright at Baylor, who left Baylor for BYU, that $3.5 million price tag, they waved that in his face, and his dad reportedly was the one who said, nope, need it, got to have it, let's go. I don't know Rocco Beck's dad. I don't know Sam Levitt's dad. I don't know their agent. I don't know where exactly their situation will fall and how much money they can turn down. Look, if tomorrow, I have a job with Locked On Big 12. If tomorrow I was offered $500 million to go work for Locked On SEC, I'd probably take the Locked On SEC job, right? There's a price for everyone, for everything. If $4 million takes away, I don't know what Levitt's making right now. What if it is 1.5 million? 4 million is a lot more than that. That's a lot more million. So there's an opportunity, and Tennessee fans are tweeting up a storm about that name, Sam Levitt at Arizona State, and how they can pull him away. Cam Scadaboo didn't do it. He proved you can be elite there. He proved you can go to the college football playoff there. Jordan Tyson elected to stay, even though there were rumors of him going to Florida. He is still a wide receiver in the arsenal of Sam Levitt. I think if Levitt leaves, Tyson might do the exact same thing because he's losing an elite quarterback. Take Beck off the table right now. I think Avery Johnson, Sam Levitt would be the top two that Tennessee throws their hat in the ring for, especially because Levitt's got at least two more years in Knoxville or Tempe, wherever he stays.
Yeah, I think what's so tough about this, and I like going back to Nico for just a little bit, and then maybe we'll jump back to Big 12 and then move on. I think do you have an opinion on Tennessee not allowing this? Because I think it's great for college football that they basically said, like, hey, we're not playing this game. I did a video before he left when it was just kind of like he had missed practice, and my gut then was that they were going to fold. They were going to bend. We saw this a couple of years ago with Tyler Van Dyke in Alabama. He kind of, I saw a lot of Miami fans, and I know they tune into this and they actually like me on this channel, but I saw a lot of Miami fans like this would never happen here, and I'm like, hold up. It might never happen again. Like, Mario does seem like he has tightened up his stance on this, and so credit to him for that. But this did happen at Miami. It happened very publicly in Tallahassee. It just wasn't with a quarterback. It was with some defensive linemen that jumped in the portal and then ended up coming back out because we paid them more, whatever. This happens. I like that Tennessee did not allow this. I think it would have been a bad precedent to continue to set because it's happened before in college football. And I'm hoping you look at some of the rumors of where Nico may land, UNC, Tulane, UCLA. None of these are, I guess Tulane is kind of a playoff contender just because of, you just have to be the best group of 5 team. And with Nico, they certainly are, but not a championship contender, right? I'm thankful almost to a fault that Notre Dame's not jumping into this. Ohio State's not jumping into this. USC's not jumping into this. Not that I think USC's a serious contender, but they have a lot of talent out there for sure. I'm glad that this is not being honored by other coaches. Now, a place where Belichick's at, a place like UCLA, Tulane, you gotta go all in any of those kind of places where you are. But I'm thankful that, listen, players are going to do what they want to do. Teams are going to do what they want to do at the end of the day. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. I'm glad that the bluff was called and they said, hey, dog, you're not worth it. We're not going to get publicly dragged through the mud like this, and good luck elsewhere.
Yeah, Tennessee says go. And I don't think that Nico is necessarily upset with that because now he's got an opportunity to make more money. And if money was the ultimate goal here, not winning a championship, then money's probably what he's going to get. I imagine now he'll start shopping those jobs. That's what this is. It's a job. North Carolina might be the school willing to pony it up. However, what really hurt him, TJ, I do want to get your thoughts on this. It seems like the public perception of Nico, who could have been a preseason Heisman contender in some people's books, led his team to the college football playoff last year, starting for an SEC school. That public perception has changed into what a bad quarterback, what an overrated quarterback, what a diva. And I believe that's going to hurt him when he gets in these negotiations. He has less power than what he perceives as we speak. And I think then if you're Sam Levitt, if you're Rocco Beck, if you're Avery Johnson, you say, look, and come on, come give me an offer for $4 million. And then his camp from there can leverage with the Arizona State or the Kansas State NIL collectives and say, he's got a $4 million offer from Tennessee. Are you willing to keep him? How much are you willing to give him? And I don't know these kids' characters. I don't know if they're willing to stay, but let's think about it this way. In a job, if you've got another offer, if somebody else calls you and says, hey, we'll give you $1 million extra, you would be silly to not at least look at it. This isn't really necessarily I'm either at Deloitte or KPMG. Okay, I'm making $1 million at Deloitte. KPMG offers me $2 million. You're probably just leaving without asking any questions. But no one's going to look at you and say, "Oh, you weren't loyal to Deloitte. You weren't loyal to that CPA firm or wherever you're working." They're going to say, "Oh, you took the better opportunity." So you look at Avery Johnson or Sam Levitt or Nico and say they hate their school and they're such a brat, and they're just kind of employees of
right.
They're employees of a football program doing what's best for them.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with Nico going somewhere and getting more money. I don't at all. I said this on Double Fries yesterday, but if somebody was to offer me $2 million a year to cover Akron football, I would immediately change that. I might move that football over. We'd still pay a little respect to Bobby, but I'd put an Akron football up there tomorrow. Yeah. Now, I'd still cheer for FSU. Yeah, but here's so I don't think Nico's a bad guy by any means. I think his dad getting mixed up in the middle of it got the way it kind of went down publicly, it happening at the end of spring. And I mean, shoot, there was a portal window in December. We could have saved a lot of this drama. I think that is all a bad PR look for him. And I do agree. It hurts his negotiating with other schools. Tulane, I don't think has $4 million to throw at him, right? If that's where he ends up. So I agree with all that. Where I think the real problem is Tennessee was not going to land Nico if not offering him an outrageous $8+ million NIL package as a high schooler, right? And I mean, USC was absolutely, he was staying somewhere there in California, probably USC from the people that I've spoken with. And I do have a lot of respect for guys like Kirby Smart and others who are still very relational. And I like Josh Heupel a lot. This is not a shot at him or Tennessee or anything like that. We do really well with our Tennessee followers on this channel. But I do think it's a lesson that when things are more transactional than relational, that's where you get into a lot of trouble. And so Nico was offered $8 million plus as a high schooler to come and play 4 years at the University of Tennessee. It's not a surprise that 3 years in, when the market's changed and he sees Mensa over at Duke making $4 a year, he doesn't say like, dude, I'm better than Mensa. Yeah. Like, I know that we've all joked and said like, well, Nico wasn't even that good this year. Why is he asking for more money? He was better than that guy, right? Or he looks around the market and says like, look what Beck just got at Miami. Like, I'm worth more money. But when it's transactional and not relational, that's the issue. And I think that's a lesson for everybody. Yeah, it's great. It's great to flex a huge recruiting win and a huge, hey, we got money here at BYU or Florida State or Ohio State. Yeah. We won this battle because we're rich. That's great. Yeah, that is great for winning that battle. But if there's not a relationship that it's based on, it's always transactional. And I'm not saying Nico's a bad guy. Listen, I would take the money. I would absolutely be negotiating for more money because truth be told, I don't care about any of these teams except for one, right? And so if I was playing somewhere else, I wouldn't care at all. And if I have kids that are blessed enough to somehow play college sports, we're going to be in the same boat too. But I do think that's why relationships are so smart. And Kirby's talked about it. Others have talked about it. They really build that relationship first, and then NIL, they take care of their guys. Nobody on Georgia's roster is underpaid. Nobody on Ohio State's roster is underpaid, right? So they take care of their guys, but they very much focus on the relationship part. And that's where I think maybe Tennessee has a life lesson to learn about that going forward.
No doubt. And this is hopefully in a year's time, kind of a moot point in college athletics. And we realized that was the last time that headline made shockwaves across college football because something has been put in place to avoid this situation, or at least make it cleaner, where kids can't make as strong demands or universities can't kick somebody to the curb because it will be abused by a university who kicks somebody who's a quality player to the curb, and it will be abused by a player who thinks they can make more money and ends up broke. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. I'm 24, man. I don't really know what I'm doing with my money, but Monarch Money has changed that. My own personal CFO. It's so easy to download Monarch Money as an app and then know where my money is going. It gives you full visibility. You take control of your finances, and it's not just a budgeting app. It's a financial command center. You stop managing your money. You start building wealth. I'm saving money because I'm using Monarch to see where my money is going at a detailed, microscopic level. Instead of juggling multiple apps, use Monarch Money to check your finances and manage it with your partner. It's smoother than ever. You can track your spending, set goals, stay on the same page without stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your entire first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. Visit Monarch Money and do it today.
Texas Tech's talent acquisition, this both portal window. Well, I guess the second one hasn't even opened yet, but what appears to be another ramp up period for them. Let's talk about them. Are they building a super team? Like, are they like, how high up are they on your Big 12, projections for next year with all the talent that the influx and what they've brought in? Let's talk about Texas Tech a little bit.
All right, everybody, listen to me here. Listen, and you can argue it. You can be mad at it. You can be upset. You can push back if you want to. Texas Tech, I'm right. Texas Tech has the most talented roster in football in the Big 12 next year. Texas Tech has the most talented roster in Big 12 football. Now, we made that case about Colorado and Utah last year. It doesn't necessarily translate to wins directly, but if we just take blue chips, if we take production from other schools, they've entered the transfer portal, they're going somewhere else, and they're creating a super team, Texas Tech is as close as we get to that in the Big 12 next season. Why? According to Parker Fleming, Statso War on Twitter, great account, by the way, does deep dives on analytics in football, college football, 24/7, 365, says blue chip recruits through the portal in 2025. Texas Tech, 12. The rest of the Big 12, 15 teams, 12. 24 blue chip prospects in this conference, 12 of them went to Texas Tech in the portal. They got 2 edge players, 2 offensive tackles, 1 interior D lineman, 1 interior O lineman. Like they're building a super team that also features a blue chip running back, 2 corners, a safety, a receiver, a tight end. They're putting every single position together, additions at every position, creating competition, bringing in elite level talent. And how are they doing it? Oil money, the Matador Club. They're paying these kids, and they're doing it without remorse. No one's here saying, oh, we hate Texas Tech because they're rich. It's Texas Tech donors saying, we're rich. We're going to give that money toward football. We're going to give it to JT Topman in basketball. We're going to make a statement in the revenue sports that Texas Tech, despite being in Lubbock, which I mention a lot, I continue to mention, and it sucks for those in Lubbock. I've been to Lubbock. I've lived in Texas for 5 years. Lubbock is a hard place to consider Texas in college football. Why? Dallas recruits, spectacular. Houston recruits, spectacular. There's talent in East Texas. West Texas gets a little tougher. Lubbock Coronado's good, but you can't build a powerful Power 4 college football team out of the Lubbock area. And you're still 4 hours away from the next metro that's got major athleticism in that state. So you're trying to battle bringing players into the far reaches of the state in a state that is dominated by blue bloods at the high school level, and they haven't really figured out how to do that with great success until Joey McGuire got there, until the NIL collective became what it is today. And now they're saying, look, even though your mom and your dad, they live just outside of Lake Worth, and you would love to play at TCU. What if we gave you $500,000 extra dollars? Would that appease it? Then mom and dad can come to all the games because they can afford to do so. That's how Texas Tech can maneuver this, and they're doing it with such great success that you can't hate it. You can only respect the schools right now in an era where it's legal to spend money. You can only respect the schools that are actually spending that money and spending it at a high rate. Texas Tech is one of those. They are creating a sleeping giant, a juggernaut in this conference. I think we've already talked plenty. We've waxed poetic about BYU. It's BYU and it's Texas Tech at the top of this thing. Colorado not far behind.
Do you think that how do you think it translates? We've seen this go. I mean, this is asking you to predict something that's absolutely ridiculous. We've seen it go really well with portal teams. We've seen it absolutely fall off a cliff. You don't even have to exit the same city to have seen it do both of those things. How well do you think this kind of gels? Do you think it, takes them some time, but maybe they can get rolling later? Or what are your thoughts around, the nucleus that they had and then the pieces they've added kind of working together this season?
Yeah, the fact that they have not jumped at the Nico news, I've heard from Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech that really Tech donors right now have no interest. They're happy with their quarterback right now. That's a good spot to be in. And donors feel, as he put it to me, almost giddy that that people think they're so rich that they're just throwing money at any quarterback who went to the playoffs and is now in the transfer portal. So I believe the nucleus is still there. They're not getting too big for their britches. They're not kicking out legitimate players that have been loyal to Texas Tech and could give them good playing time in years moving forward. So that's good. They're staying grounded where they need to be. And I don't think that all these blue chip prospects will contribute day one. They don't need to, though. They need to compete. This was Sawyer Robertson, DeQuan Finn at Baylor. No one's really heard of DeQuan Finn in the last year. Little did they know he made exponentially more NIL dollars than Sawyer Robertson, who became a young star in college football last year. The reason being, DeQuan Finn came in as the MAC Player of the Year. Baylor gave him the Brink truck, and then he stunk. But the competition he created in the spring, the competition he kept on in the fall, made Sawyer Robertson a better quarterback. To now, he's also in this conversation for the next Tennessee starting quarterback. He's gotten that good, that much attention, that much prowess. Also from Lubbock Coronado, I should add. It's interesting that we spin it back to there being no talent in West Texas. But that is what Texas Tech's getting, competition across the board. Even if the blue chip kids don't play, they're going to make better your other defensive lineman, your other quarterback, your other running back, your other whoever. And so they've kept the nucleus of their QB. Joey McGuire is one of the best high school football coaches in Texas history, and it's translated enough. I mean, he's won pretty much in the same way every other head coach at Texas Tech has ever won. No one's won championships there, 10, 11, 12 games year in and year out. McGuire's trying to prove that he can be that guy with the right resources. Now that the right resources are there, the nucleus of your quarterback is still at play. I'm very trusting of McGuire to utilize this to win. However, it's still Texas Tech, and they just have this knack as a football program for finding a way to go 8-4, 9-3 pretty much every season, no matter what.
What should the expectations be for them this year?
I think Texas Tech has to be a Big 12 championship contender. You can't, if you're a donor group or the Matador Club, and let's say hypothetically, we'll use $20 million for an example, that kind of matches to what a lot of these football players are making, and maybe the Matador Club is less or more, I don't know. We'll use $20 million. You spent that in 1 year, and you went 7-5. If you spend $20 million as a donor collective, or you individually spend $2 million to build a good football team, and they go 7-5, look at Florida State last year. What was 1-11, 2-10? From there, and there's no knock at Florida State, but if you're a donor and you gave $2 million, why did I do that?
Yeah,
I just threw away money for a year. Where I love to support my school, but at some level, I'm spending so much to watch a good football product. If you can't deliver that, then this is where donors have taken even more control in college football. So, I could give you, I think Texas Tech could go 10-2 or 9-3 or whatever. But instead, my expectation is that Texas Tech either wins or they lose to the detriment of Joey McGuire's job. Because people in West Texas, they're not here to filter in money like they do at Ohio State or Alabama or LSU. Win or lose, we know that eventually you're going to be good. At Texas Tech, it's be good, or we're going to stop giving you money, or we're going to fire you. You have to make use of the money they give you, and you got to get it right pretty quickly, because the second you get it wrong is the second that money stops rolling in the same way it is right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, whoa. Sorry, TJ. I didn't mean to do that. Arkansas, great example. Sorry. Arkansas, their athletic director, the second they started sucking in football, he blamed it on the fan base. Start giving us more in NIL. You can't do that. That's where Texas Tech could fall short. If they start losing, your AD can't come out and say, well, if you give us more money, we'll stop losing. It doesn't work that way. That's the expectation next year. They have to put the money where their mouth is.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that. Florida State had a very high-paid roster last year. Now, it wasn't necessarily high as Ohio State or Oregon or anything like that. But they paid, I think, closer to 15 than 10, right? Yeah. So still pretty high. And I mean, it wasn't a problem of resources, right? Florida State doesn't necessarily pay as high as Florida or Miami, who have, bigger donor or larger donor prowess is maybe the right way to say it, but they still pay very well. And to go, Florida State was a higher paid roster than I would probably guess all but maybe 3 teams they played last year, and they still went 2-10. That's a problem because the support is there. It's what'd you do with it? So Texas Tech has spent a crap load of money, as we all know. Even Texas Tech would admit that. What do you do with it, right? I guess they play 9 games, right? A 6-3 in the Big 12 this year is not going to feel very good for the amount of money they've spent, no matter what that amount is. So yeah, I'm with you. You got to, if you want that same money next year, or if you want to be the one receiving the money, you better figure out a way to win this year. But it's hard to not be high on them right now. Sure. We can do all this prognosticating now, but it's hard to not look at the talent and say, "Oof, that should be something to watch in the fall." Drake, where can people follow you, man? Where can they find your work?
Yep, at LO Big 12, at Drake C. Toll on Twitter, and wherever you find your podcast with Locked On Big 12.
Thanks, buddy.
Anytime, TJ.